In December of 1979, then Soviet President Leonid Brezhnev sent about 300 aircraft and about 25,000 Russian troops into Afghanistan to uphold communist rule in that country. In a matter of days, the Soviet army concluded a special operation. They secured Kabul, the capital, but then loosely organized guerrilla fighters, who were called the Mujahideen, started fighting back. The next year, in 1980, the United States and Saudi Arabia started arming these guerrillas through Pakistan and its spy agency, the ISI. The Soviet war in Afghanistan lasted for about 10 years. Eventually, the Taliban, or the Mujahideen, they won, and the Soviet army had to retreat. Many call this Russia's Vietnam. The real reason why the Taliban was successful was because it was merely a proxy. This was a real fight between the United States and the Soviet Union, except that America was not directly fighting. It was happy to weaponize foreign fighters. Something similar is happening now in Ukraine. Even though this is a special military operation launched by Russia in Ukraine, this is actually a war between the United States and Russia, between NATO and Russia. For the very first time since the invasion of Ukraine, the United States is providing Kiev with high-power weapons. Not defensive weapons, but offensive ones. Attack helicopters, medium-range artillery guns, and stealth and attack drones. The United States has been wary of doing this up until now because many felt that this would be viewed by Vladimir Putin as an escalation by the US and NATO. But now, the gloves are well and truly off. On Crux Decode this week, what does America's arming of Ukraine mean for this war? Is America fighting this war using Ukraine as a proxy? The new weapons list is worth $800 million. Most notably, there is no increase in either Stinger or Javelin anti-tank missiles. Those were the staple up until now. This now indicates a new type of fight, a shifting away from the urban centers in cities like Kiev and Irpin to the open plains of the southeast part of Ukraine in the Donbas. It's a terrain that is more suited to the Russian military's open warfare. The Russian army, or any other conventional army for that matter, is not trained to fight guerrilla warfare in densely populated urban centers. The US is also afraid that after the brief lull following the agreement in Istanbul a few weeks ago, the Russian troops have had enough time to regroup and re-strategize and prepare for the deadly assault in Donbas. Also, a Russian military that suffered losses in the first few weeks, which was unable to secure Kiev, will be keen to show the world that it is still a lean, mean fighting machine. The package announced by the Biden administration includes 11 Mi-17 helicopters that had initially been earmarked for Afghanistan, 18 155mm howitzer cannons, 300 switchblade drones, and that's not all. There will also be radar and missile defense systems that are capable of tracking incoming fire. Now, this package stands out because it involves heavier duty weaponry. It also involves offensive weapon. And by design, the United States is also making the calculation that as the Russian forces shift from populated centers like Kiev, they will resort to more traditional military domination. Remember, the Donbas is essentially a flat land. It's like the plains. Therefore, the US is also shifting the kind of weaponry it's providing Ukraine. This newly authorized package was announced just days after the National Security Advisor of the US, Jake Sullivan, and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, spent more than 2 hours on the phone with their Ukrainian counterparts. The US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, too, spoke with the Ukrainian Defense Minister twice in the past 10 days. Joe Biden then delivered the news of this assistance package during a 1-hour-long phone call with Vladimir Zelensky. But there was one item that Zelensky has been repeatedly asking for, which continues to be denied: MiG-29 fighter jets, which Ukrainian pilots are trained to fly. Instead, the US arrived at a via media and agreed to add the Mi-17 attack helicopters instead. The weapons being provided are focused on the type of fighting that's likely to take place in the Donbas. Like I said, it's an open terrain rather than close fighting in urban and built-up areas. The region also borders southwest Russia, which allows the Russian forces to avoid the kind of logistics and communications problems that we saw their all-out invasion in being unable to capture the capital, Kiev. The Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby says that this package was tailored to the fight in Donbas, which has a lot of flat land. In fact, Kirby compared this to the US state of Kansas. It's the kind of place where the Russians will want to use tanks, long-range fire, artillery, and rocket fire to pummel the Ukrainians. Ground troops may only be sent later. The Biden administration has been facing bipartisan pressure to do more and to be seen as doing more to help Ukraine, particularly by sending in more powerful weapons. The administration, though, resisted for weeks now, wary of how Russian President Vladimir Putin would react. After all, any move by the US will be seen as escalation by the Kremlin. Since Moscow invaded Ukraine on the 24th of February, the Biden administration has already deployed more than 100,000 US troops in NATO member countries around Ukraine. Not just that, it's authorized almost $2.5 billion in military aid since this war began. But all's not well, because like I said, everything that Zelensky is asking for has not been met with. One critical issue has been the MiG-29 fighter jets, which Ukraine so desperately needs. For weeks now, Zelensky has been asking for it. He's wanted a transfer of the Soviet-era jets from a third country, a country like Poland, for example, into Ukraine via the United States. Warsaw, in fact, a few weeks ago had made such a proposal, but Washington refused. It's not just the United States. Slovakia has provided Ukraine with S-300 anti-aircraft missiles. The Czech Republic has sent in T-72 tanks. The United Kingdom has announced that it would ship about 120 armored vehicles, in addition to, of course, providing sea-based weaponry to the Ukrainians. But it's not just about the weapons. Even things like repairs and spare parts and critical software upgrades, which are all crucial on the battlefield to ensure durability and sustainability, has also been promised to the Ukrainians. And the problem is that Russia is also taking notice. Just this past week, the Russian embassy in Washington sent a note verbale, it's a note of protest, accusing the United States of irresponsibly militarizing Ukraine. It also called on Washington to refrain from giving offensive weaponry. Otherwise, in that note verbale, Russia says there will be unpredictable consequences. Russia is also expected to change its own tactics as this war changes away from populated centers like Kiev onto the Donbas. Russia has transferred most of its troops as well as its armor that was stationed in Belarus. It's distributing its forces by and large to the east of Ukraine, that's in the Donbas. The Russian military concentrations in the north in Kharkiv, in the south in Mariupol, and now large concentrations in the east. The idea basically is to cut off Ukrainian defensive units from all three directions.